time to catch up with Debrief, your quick wrap-up of Verde World's top stories from the week.
Yes, I want to hear, I want to listen.
Yalla, yalla, yalla. The buses are here.
Can we stop there? Let's stop there.
The prayers of millions have finally been answered. On the podium in Sharm el-Sheikh, US President Donald Trump announces peace in the Middle East. Signed sealed, but still yet to be delivered.
The Israeli army has killed at least 8 Palestinians just a day after world leaders gathered to sign a ceasefire deal.
The war may be over, but Gaza's wounds are carved in stone. Across the Strip, 84% of buildings are damaged. Trucks are trickling in again, but with little coordination or fairness. Many residents say aid isn't reaching those who need it most.
After 2 years of war, they are in desperate need of everything. The destruction left behind after constant Israeli bombardment is immense.
There's about 55 million tons of debris throughout Gaza. This is equal to 13 pyramids of Giza, just to give you an indication of the challenge that will be required as well.
With the fragile ceasefire still holding between Hamas and Israel, US President Donald Trump announced that Phase 2 of his Gaza peace deal begins now.
And as Trump announces Phase 2 of this plan, part of Stage 1 isn't complete. Not all the bodies of the remaining Israeli captives have been released, as many lie under the rubble of their country's own onslaught.
Hamas says it's not going to be able to hand over these bodies without having special equipment, without having the time to go through the rubble.
Israel threatened to cut aid to the Palestinian enclave because all the captives' bodies have yet to be returned.
On the border, Israel is restricting the number of trucks allowed to enter the Strip.
At least 600 trucks of aid should be crossing into the enclave every day. Right now, hundreds are still lined up on the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing, waiting for the go-ahead.
300 trucks of aid is not really getting into Gaza on a daily basis. Even that amount that Israel wanted to start with is not really getting into Gaza.
Well, the UN says 560 tons of food is entering Gaza daily, but convoys are struggling to reach the northern part of the Gaza Strip, where the humanitarian crisis is the most severe. And the World Food Programme says it's yet to begin distributions in Gaza City because of the closure of the Zikin and the Erez border crossings.
The past week, Ashraf, of course, the living hostages being returned to Israel, also the bodies of deceased hostages being retrieved and returned. But coming in the other direction have been Palestinian bodies.
Many of the bodies arrived severely mutilated. According to Gaza's government media office, some were missing eyes, limbs, and internal organs, accusing Israeli forces of stealing organs from slain Palestinian captives. As families wait for answers, a joint committee is now examining the bodies, hoping to document every trace of abuse and submit the findings to international courts. For Gaza's grieving families, the ceasefire may have paused the fighting, but not the painful process of recovery.
In Madagascar, soldiers have joined thousands of protesters in the capital after announcing they would refuse any orders to shoot demonstrators. After police used stun grenades and tear gas to try to disperse the demonstrators, soldiers arrived at the gathering where they were welcomed with cheers. The protests are largely led by a youth movement known as Gen Z Mada.
Madagascar's president says he is sheltering in a safe place to protect his own life. Rajoelina did not disclose his whereabouts in his first public address since army units defected to join anti-government protesters. Opposition leader says that Rajoelina has fled the country.
Some military units have joined young protesters, forcing the president to flee the country and claim a coup is taking place.
Ongoing protests, mainly in the capital Antananarivo, have left dozens killed.
Madagascar's military has announced that it has taken charge of the country and suspended the constitution.
They say that in a few days, they will set up a civilian government. So that is what the military unit just said.
Madagascar's military coup leader has announced he is assuming the position of ousted President Rajoelina.
According to the ruling issued by the High Constitutional Court, I am taking the position of president. These friends of mine are with me.
But ousted leader Randrianirina is still fighting back from his place of hiding, insisting he is still president.
Madagascar's new military ruler, Colonel Michael Randrianirina, says he will be sworn in as president on Friday.
Colonel Michael Randrianirina has been sworn in as president by the country's constitutional court. The ceremony comes days after he announced his elite unit had taken power. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the change of government, calling it unconstitutional, and also calling for the return to law and order.
Here's the news and briefs, where we bring you even more top stories. Tensions have escalated along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, resulting in the deadliest clashes in years. On Saturday, Taliban forces launched coordinated attacks on multiple Pakistani military posts. Pakistan reported the deaths of over 50 soldiers and the capture of several border posts. In retaliation, Pakistani forces conducted airstrikes on Kabul and Kandahar, reportedly killing dozens of Taliban members and several civilians. The violence led to civilian casualties on both sides and widespread displacement.
Pakistan was once a strong supporter of the Afghan Taliban, but not anymore. In an official statement, Islamabad now questions their rule and says Afghans deserve a truly representative government.
A 48-hour ceasefire was agreed upon on Wednesday, with both countries committing to dialogue to resolve the conflict. The clashes have raised concerns over regional stability. The situation remains tense, with the international community urging restraint and peaceful negotiations. Tensions have escalated between the United States and Venezuela after a deadly U.S. military strike off the Venezuelan coast. On Tuesday, U.S. forces targeted a vessel in Venezuelan waters, killing 6 people suspected of drug trafficking. This is the 5th such operation since September, bringing the total reported deaths to 27. Washington says the strikes targeted members of the Tren de Aragua gang, accused of narco-terrorism, though evidence has not been publicly released. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro condemned the attacks as extrajudicial killings, calling for international scrutiny and warning of possible retaliation. But the next day, Trump announced that he authorized the CIA to carry out operations in Venezuela. Following his remarks, the Venezuelan government accused the US of violating international law and the UN Charter and asked the UN Security Council to declare the US strikes illegal.
Venezuela is feeling heat, but I think a lot of other countries are feeling heat too. We're not going to let this country, our country, be ruined because other people want to drop, as you say, their worst.
On Wednesday, Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara made his first official visit to Moscow, where he met the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The leaders discussed the future of Russia's military presence in Syria, including the Hamaimim air base in Latakia, the naval base at Tartus, and a presence at Kamishli airport. Al-Shara assured Putin that Syria would honor all previous agreements, signaling a commitment to maintaining strategic ties. The visit also touched on regional stability, economic cooperation, and the rebuilding of Syria's energy infrastructure. Russia has stepped up strikes across Ukraine this week, hitting energy infrastructure and civilian sites. Russian missiles and drones damaged power plants and gas facilities, forcing emergency blackouts across most regions. Hundreds of thousands remain without electricity, including parts of Kiev. Civilian areas were also hit. A hospital in Kharkiv was damaged, evacuations took place, and civilians were killed in Kherson. A UN aid convoy was struck near the front lines. On the battlefield, Ukraine recaptured some villages in Zaporizhia, while Russia claimed territory in Donetsk. Meanwhile, Germany pledged over $2 billion in military aid, as the Kremlin warns of escalation if long-range missiles are sent to Ukraine. Ukraine braces for more attacks as the conflict intensifies, heading into winter. And now for a taste of our programs.
Well, Turkey's trade volume with the African continent has grown almost sevenfold from $5.4 billion in 2003 to $35 billion in 2025. Now, the country is setting its sights even higher, aiming to double that figure to $70 billion in the coming years. The goal comes as the Turkey-Africa Business Forum is currently underway here in Istanbul, with business leaders and ministers from all over Africa attending. Emre Boz is at the event. Emre, this is a significant event, especially because there is a very high target to double the amount of trade that Turkey is doing with the African continent. Can you tell us what makes this forum so important?
If you look behind me, there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of activity from these African entrepreneurs, business leaders coming here to Istanbul, coming to this forum. But if I were to break it down, it's important for two fundamental reasons. The first, it's giving investment opportunities between Turkey and these African countries.
To Kenya now, which is mourning the death of veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga. He was a towering figure in Kenya's politics who fought for social justice, pushed for institutional reforms and democracy.
A key figure for decades in Kenya's politics, Raila Amolo Odinga stood at the center of the country's turbulent political landscape. Known to his supporters as Baba, a Swahili term meaning father, or in this case, father of politics, he leaves behind a mixed legacy. From the fight for multi-party politics to contested elections, he ran for president 5 times, managing to rally millions of supporters, but always falling short of outright victory. The 2007 election, widely viewed as being overshadowed by vote rigging, sparked violence that claimed thousands of lives. Odinga was appointed prime minister in a power-sharing deal. Beyond Kenyan politics, Odinga was appointed as High Representative for Infrastructure and Development for the African Union. He was known for his Pan-African ideals and called for economic justice across the continent. Despite his death, his supporters hope that Odinga's name and policies will continue to resonate the country's political landscape and history.
Africa's 9 direct World Cup qualifying places have been all sewn up, but it's the qualification story around one of the smallest teams in international football that tugs at the heartstrings, the tiny island nation off the coast of West Africa, Cape Verde. Now, they steamrolled Eswatini 3-0 at home on Monday to punch their ticket to what is their first ever trip to the World Cup. They're not exactly the smallest country to make it to the big tournament. Iceland from 2018 had a smaller population, but just look at these emotions. Listen in, come on. You don't have to imagine what it felt like when their qualification was confirmed. For fans, it was like watching a dream. For the players, it was a dream come true.